I'm Lola.
And I'm Mamuna. Together, we have a combined 35 years of experience within the tech scene in North America and Europe.
We talk about the highs, the lows, the WTFs of navigating the technology industry and answer your questions about navigating tech careers.
This is Lost in Tech.
Have you seen what people are doing on Twitter X right now with Solana? With all this pre-sale nonsense?
No, tell me.
Go on, tell us more.
So
don't hurt my heart though.
So it seems like what people with high amounts of clout are doing right now are they're just posting their wallet address or a wallet address and being like, there's a pre-sale going on right now. Send your Solana here. And, you know, I'm going to launch this coin. So it's all just based on trust me, bro mentality.
Wait, so they're posting their own wallets
for people. It's nuts. Not necessarily their own wallet. Like they'll make an address that people can just send their stuff to. And sometimes they'll go and make a coin out of it and register a coin out of it. And sometimes they'll just disappear from Twitter forever.
That sounds so risky.
Yeah.
That I feel really uncomfortable about that.
Yeah.
Because there are some that, you know, they end up making good on the promise and using their following to really pump the price of things. I have no idea. Probably very low. It's always very low, the successful ones.
So I think I have such conflicting feelings about this because obviously I work in blockchain. So, you know, part of me is like, this happens outside of blockchain, but is less accessible because it's through a financial trader or somebody who is an official. And like,
but they're vetted in some way, right?
Are they? Like, if you know, like, what was that guy, the Bernie Madoff stuff? Like, he was vetted and yet look, and it went on for decades. And like, so I feel like the blockchain equivalent feels more roguish, but it's actually the same grift, right? It's the same grift, just different platform. However, the thing that I like about the blockchain equivalent, or maybe like, because I know what's the hype that everyone's going on with is meme coins, which are literally like, I'm calling them cultural capital. It's like I'm wearing a badge to say I'm part of a club. Like if you follow someone on social media today and you give them your likes and your attention, you are their product. You make them money and you never make any money. If somebody you really value launches a meme coin on a blockchain and you get airdropped a meme coin and that meme coin goes up in price, now your cultural relationship is making you both money. And that's just a different mathematical formula. And you may ask, what are the fundamentals of meme coin? I have no idea. I'm also not one of these people who follows a ton of influencers on Instagram. But for the people who do, part of me is like, there's one world where it's all give, no get. And then there's another world where there's a lot of give and a lot of get. And then the occasional scam. But even the scam is not new. It's just people grift. There was one interesting scenario, though. I won't name names, but on a chain that I am close to, somebody launched an NFT project and tried to do something called a rug pull, which is, you know, the idea is that you keep the value inside the project, and then people who hold that NFT, they see the desirability go up and everyone participates in the kind of accrual economy that comes off having a really highly valued NFT. This guy did this and then stole all the money and tried to run. But he was so involved in the ecosystem. It was a really long grift. Like I think he'd been around for about a year and he'd been really active in communities and he knew people. And he was actually working on a project with someone who was the one who outed him on the day to say like, yo, this person I've been working on a project with, they just deleted all their accounts everywhere and I can't find them. And I think they've just done a rug pull. But the way the ecosystem was set up, they had KYC'd in a couple of places. So that means there were parts of the ecosystem that actually had their real world ID and home address. And they tried to move the money through centralized exchanges. Now,
so they could track it
again,
at that point.
The US doesn't love centralized exchanges because they're not following our rules. But actually what ended up happening in this case is they could stop the money leaving.
Oh.
So they could actually, because they custody the thing. So as soon as it was flagged, it's like, okay, one, we can report this person to the police. The community, this is what's so massive, beautiful. I'll put the link in the show notes. Like a Twitter thread started, and then a bunch of people were like, yo, this happened to me. This is what they did. This is what I know. Here's a screen grab, etc., etc., etc. And so the community got together and said, we're not going to let this happen. We're not going to let this person get away. We may not have a photo of their face, but we damn sure have enough of a paper trail of what's happened. And this is what happens when the blockchain is public, is you can follow the breadcrumbs of the transactions and you can see what happens from one wallet to another. So everyone saw where the money went and we knew where he was trying to get the money out of the ecosystem. And so a police report and a lot of like,
what could the police do?
Scam reports.
What can they do?
Oh no, but it was theft. It was theft. Okay. It was fraud. Like there was definitely fraud committed. I don't know what the police is doing or what's happened there, but he can be reported to the police because taking the money out was theft. But flagging the issue to the exchanges also meant that they could decide not to let those funds out.
Money out. Ooh.
So that means that you just tried to pull a scam and you got nothing, and you're probably going to jail. And people kind of know who you are. I felt like it was kind of silly, but I watched it last week and I was like, would this happen in like a normal banking system? It's like,
I was just trying to think
when I had my, it feels incredibly private.
Though.
When I had things, it happens. But when I have my things stolen from, like I had my credit cards taken and like transactions and accounts, no one could help me trace the funds.
No.
Because my bank account was private.
Yeah.
And all I could do was call the bank who didn't care and call the police who didn't care. And it felt like a very isolating event. Whereas in this case, you had a very large community of people who all were taken to the cleaners by this project and by this individual. And they all got their detective on. And everyone was like, here's what I got sent. Here's a message that I did last week. And then here's this. And then here's a wallet address. And here's a contract address. And here's an ID. And this is an institution. And I'm pretty sure this is where the funds went. Like, it was literally like watching,
American
the community. Yeah. It's like, and I
work.
Yeah. So there's this tension. It's like the fact that it was public suddenly made it much. And all of this, like stopping this money and like freezing it, probably all happened within the space of like 24 hours. Jeez. And even in that 24 hours, another set of people set up a fund and said, like, if you had money stolen in this, you can connect and we will validate that you were actually one of the people, again, because we don't need to trust you. We could just look at what happened on chain with your address. Do you control it? And we will give you your money back. And so everyone was also made good. And so it just...
That's good. Think about the application of that in not blockchain, but like in centralized banking or anywhere else. How would that work? Because I do think that it'd be great if, people could track down their money in some way, but I don't think you can actually, like, there would be no way unless a person was like, I don't even know.
But I think it's kind of this question of like, what do the financial systems we participate in look like, right? So I don't, and I'm still struggling with this actually. So like if I look at my investments in blockchain, I don't share my wallet addresses with everyone because even though the information is public, I'm not trying to say, look how much I got in this wallet, haha, YOLO.
Sure.
And I don't know that a lot of people do. So that wallet exists as an anonymous representation of my holdings on that chain. But if I needed help, I would absolutely be able to say, yo, this is what happened. This is what I did. Can someone help me figure out where my money's gone?
Yeah.
I don't have the same optionality with my privacy in a closed ecosystem. And I do think that's a downside.
It'd be interesting if in a closed ecosystem, you didn't have to say what your account details were, but you could ask for help in like transactions in and out. I don't know. But then what would that look like? I think it's an
it's
interesting.
hard.
Yeah, I think there's an interesting overlap there that eventually could be beneficial to thinking about like theft and fraud of
There is,
the
I think,
accounts.
yeah, and I suspect that what's going to end up happening is that we actually become more comfortable sharing things that we wouldn't typically share. So like right now, if you're in the C-suite of a public company, your salary is public, but no one else's is.
Right.
Maybe what happens is everybody gets used to their salaries being public.
Yeah.
Everybody gets used to their savings being public. Like if you hold a certain amount of shares in a company, at some point you become so influential that you have to be disclosed as a, is it controlling owner or significant owner?
Mm-hmm.
So I think with blockchain, ultimately, and obviously very biased here, the benefits outweigh the risks, but we have to shift from why we think we expect privacy on some things and figure out whether the gains are worth
It's interesting you're saying that because I was listening to something and I'll have to go back and think about what it is, but a person was speaking about how they don't like the fact that credit companies, at least in the US, have access to your data so they can sell your data to whomever, right? And so that's available. And if I go online, you could see a person's like political affiliation, who they voted for. And that's being scraped from some like voter registrations. Yeah. And so there is information that's publicly available that could be used against you in some way, who knows? Like your credit information, that if you wanted to say, hey, I want all my information kept private, you actually wouldn't be able to go to those credit companies and say, hey, give me my data. They're going to say, no, this is our data.
Well, so let's talk about an example of this. And actually, this is a really good pivot to the fact that I don't think people have the privacy guarantees they think they have off blockchain.
Yeah, 100%.
So I think it was this week, last week, Ford or GM Motors got raked over the coals because it turns out that if you had accepted a setting in the car, they were uploading data about how you drove to LexisNexis. And when you requested insurance, the insurance providers were able to look up your name and your driving history, like how hard you brake, how often you break the speed limit, whether you wear your car, like all of this micro data that's coming from your car on a daily basis. And they were able to use it in determining the insurance premium. And apparently you said yes because you signed the T's and C's.
Isn't Geico doing something similar?
They're all doing it. They're all doing it, but it's a complicit. So apparently GM is now stopping it because there were people who found that they couldn't get insurance. And also the data had no context because it's like, okay, you're saying I hard braked, but you didn't, you can't tell from the data if a child ran out in front of my car or a squirrel, or if I've got a really bad road, or if I live on a really steep hill. You're just seeing metadata and deciding that it is a feature of my driving. And so this was something that was super interesting because it meant that these car companies, and the way that they were selling it, there were two ways. You would either set it up when you bought the car from the dealership, and guess what? They were incentivizing the dealership to get people to sign up for, they called it like a better driving program. So it was propositioned as, this is going to help you drive better and be more fuel efficient. And
that's what Geico does.
Be smart. Yeah, smart driving or something it was called. Or when you set up the car yourself at home, you would just accept for this feature. So the condition of information being sent to LexisNexis that was then being sold to insurance companies for premiums was never really obvious. And yes, you should read the T's and C's, but who reads the T's and C's?
Who reads the T's and C's?
So again, I think the difference between non-blockchain and blockchain is, on a blockchain, right now at least, most people are aware the information is public. You do not have a right to privacy. You do not exist as Mamuna and Michael. You exist as like hash whatever. But anything that exists in that location is not private.
Right.
Outside of that, we have an expectation of privacy that is fundamentally being undermined on a regular basis because companies will
Yes.
sell our data the first chance they get.
More and more.
I think, and more and more.
Yeah.
In the same New York Times episode that I heard about that, there was an even more harrowing case of a woman who bought her car with her husband, or he bought the car because he had better credit, but it was her car. She paid for it. She bought the insurance. She drove it. He turned out to be physically abusive and violent.
Oh, God.
And so she left. But he kept finding her. She left with the car. It was her car. She used it for her business. I think, when she left, she slept in it one time or whatever. Like, it was necessary. It was very much, he'd never paid a cent. It was literally in his name by name only. Mm-hmm. Turns out that the car has an app that you can use on your phone.
Tracking.
It was a Mercedes, I think. And this app is only accessible to the owner. So she called them up and she said, he has never paid for the car. I have restraining order against this individual. I have police records. You have to stop this app from tracking me. And Mercedes had no process, no policy to support her. They were literally like, he's the owner. That's it. The end. Even though he'd not paid for it, he had not contributed towards it. He did not operate the car. And it was such a data black hole because she was like, I've just left an abusive husband. I can't just say, let me go buy another car. This is not the situation I'm in. But this guy is showing up at car parks. He's showing up at appointments while I'm trying to do my job.
Because she didn't hold a license, right? Or the title, rather.
Yeah. Yeah. And they'd gone to a court and the judge had ruled that the car belonged to her. So even though it was in his name, she also had a court order confirming that she was the rightful owner of the car.
Yeah.
And Mercedes still couldn't switch off the fact that this car was sharing data with the app that he controlled. And I was like, that is life or death. And that is a massive data failure.
Yeah.
So again, expectations of privacy not being met in the world where you think, oh, it's super scary. It's like, that shouldn't be possible. It shouldn't be possible that your life is at risk because a car has decided to share data despite like legal stuff.
I mean, I think we're seeing data sharing in all cases. I don't know what the expectation should be for anyone to have their data be private these days, even when it comes to health information, because I feel like even that is probably in some cases being leaked and sold because it's like to gather insurance, your insurance company then is talking to all your doctors and they're gathering a profile on you. And then who knows what they can do with that data, right? Like who has access to it? Like your data is everywhere. And it's not within your control.
That's the problem I have with it. I think this is where, when I think about, we've talked about this so much, like the concept of agency and like in tech.
Yes.
A lot of my ethical approach to the work that I do is, you have intent and you create intent and you let people know this is the thing you're about to do and this is what's going to happen and it will be forever. And as much as like, oh, that's friction, people prefer convenience. Yes, they do. And at the same time, we've got to slowly inch away towards a better contract. It's like, you know this about me, and I know you know this, and I know what I get for it or what it costs me, and I'm aware. The alternative is we're so blinded. We've got no idea. We've got no control, and we're certainly not making any money from it. If anything, it's often costing us money. Right?
Yeah.
So
I think that's the thing, though. I mean, if you look at like one of the topics we had today was Elon suing OpenAI. But if you look at like the original intent of a company, I'm not using it, not specifically that instance, but original intent of a company, and then potentially how it evolves over time and how that intent can change, right? So if you're working for a company and you come in during that original state, and you're like, hey, great, I'm aligned values, more like everything is aligned in this direction. And as a company veers away from that original alignment, what do you as an employee do? And then we're in a space where like the tech world jobs are challenging. Like, do you leave your job? Do you realign your values? Are you the one annoying person in the company that's like, hey, everyone, bang, 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 bang. This is what we said we would not do. I don't feel comfortable. It's hard, right?
I think it's hard, but this is partially why, like, any one of us is perfectly entitled to stay or leave.
Yes.
The thing for me though is I'm like, just know what you're really doing. You know,
Yes.
don't talk yourself into being like, I'm just doing my job and going home. I'm
Willful
just,
ignorance.
you know, this is not political. This is not this. I'm just going to do my thing, and I'm just going to go, like, shine your eye well and understand what you're doing. As we say in Nigeria, shine your eye. Right? Get all that muck out.
Yeah,
because it's okay to say I need the money and I'm going to stay. It's okay to be like, right now, my value system says I'm opting for a better future for my family. And I know that this isn't great, but I'm not going to change it. You know what?
Right.
That's on you. You sleep at night. Like, that's on you. That's where you're at. Don't be like, no, it's not like that. I don't know. And I think to connect to Elon and OpenAI, Elon's launching a competitor. And he doesn't...
XAI?
XAI, and they've got a thing on X right now called Grok. It's like weird AI. Like, I don't believe he is being altruistic. And I think anyone who thinks
wants his money back, and he wants them to open source the tech, like
so that he can build on it.
Yes,
but it's not for the good of humanity. That's the thing. Like, I don't think this guy is. He believes only he knows what is good for humanity. Yeah. So. But, you know, I think Elon is probably a good example, our favorite supervillain, of somebody who is quite comfortable looking at himself in the mirror and telling himself what he really is and why he's that way. Like, his self-belief is evident.
It's high.
It's high. And I'm like, okay, well, if you just know what you're doing, don't front that you're trying to be a good citizen.
If that's the case, but... Yeah,
he's definitely not looking at himself. Well, he might be looking at himself in the mirror and being like, I'm the only one who can save the world.
Yes. There's a couple of them. Like,
but at least, I don't know. I just think don't lie to yourself in the face of alternative facts is the thing. And if you're going to stay in a job, and, you know, it is a tough economy, as we say in the UK, it's a cost of living crisis. It's not easy to say I'm going to walk away on my morals and my ethics. But just don't be like blind to what's going on. Yeah, be aware of what you're doing, you know. Be aware.
The impact. Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about the current state of tech jobs, or the lack thereof.
So I think I said this in a previous episode. I spoke to a friend who said there are the same amount of tech jobs in 2024 that they have seen as there were in 2021, which we know was a very big hiring year in tech. Yeah. The difference is the number of candidates. But then I look at some disciplines that seem decimated. Like, if you are a UX researcher right now, I think you're probably struggling to get a new job.
Yeah.
I think if you are a content strategist right now, you're probably struggling to get a job. I think if you're a
management, I think.
Yeah, the project management side of product, you're probably struggling to get a job. Yeah. So I was looking around and I was like, okay, so where have those jobs shifted to? Which part of tech has seen a growth in profile or desirability that is balancing out the number of jobs that are still available, given what we're seeing with layoffs? And I'm now kind of like side-eyeing the friend who gave me that information, because I'm like, I'm anecdotally, obviously, I'm not seeing the evidence that there are the same amount of jobs out in the market right now. I don't know what you've seen.
I haven't seen that. I haven't seen that there are the same amount of jobs. I think that there are companies posting jobs, but I don't know if they're actually hiring for them, you know, and I don't know if they're just trying to understand, temperature check the market to like maybe get the best like one candidate out of the thousands that apply, because we're constantly having new graduates come into the job market, right? And so they're like, hey, can I get that first job? And so they're like, hey, I'm graduating this year. Do you have an internship program? Even the internship programs, paid or non-paid, those are getting, the candidates that are applying are phenomenal, right? Some of them shouldn't even be applying, but that's what they have
For
access to because they're
internships.
trying to, these internships. Like they have previous experience. In former years, they probably could get like a pretty good job, but they're not getting it. And so I definitely feel like there are constraints. And I think it's almost this world where maybe, in the boom times, people are like, money at all costs, hire, 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 get all the people in the doors, get the best talent, whatever, whatever. They acquired a lot of people. And then they said, oh no, we can't sustain this. We don't know what's to come. Now we're shutting that down. People are going back into the job market. I don't think those companies are now opening back up to say like, hey, let's hire, hire, hire again. I think those companies are saying, hey, let's try to keep to minimal numbers and see what happens. Also, shareholders love it, right? So every time we see companies call a large amount of people, shareholders are like, great, you're reducing your operating costs. Let's celebrate you. Stocks go up, and then companies get this idea where they're like, oh, every time we do riffs, our stock goes up. Right? So like this person did it, that person did it. Their stocks are doing great. We should probably try it too. And so we're seeing more and more companies take that step. And so I don't see, at least for me, a world where there are a number of jobs opening up right now.
So should we be looking at the era of the entrepreneur again, right? It's like time to do that side hustle.
I've been seeing more, like I'm in Angel Track and a couple of other companies or orgs. Like there are definitely more people doing startups these days, and they're looking for that like initial investment. But again, people are pretty tight in their pockets right now, so they're not getting even that same amount of investment. But it's not as bad, I don't think, as it was like 2 or 3 years ago. I think people are slowly being more curious, slowly willing to hear the pitches. But it is a very rough environment out there right now.
So, I mean, just to pitch blockchain again, there are some interesting. So I think that there was so much damage done with like the cowboy hustler nature of crypto. And anyone who works with me knows that I rarely use a shorthand of blockchain being crypto and crypto being blockchain because I see them as two distinct things. There's Bitcoin, that's a crypto. When I think about blockchain technology and I think about, again, the stuff we've been discussing, the public nature of the agreement, the cultural capital, and the fact that everyone makes money, there are also like tools and businesses being built on this tech that you cannot imagine. And is it sustainable?
Give some example.
Maybe, maybe not. Oh, so I'll give you an example. There is so decentralized finance is what we call DeFi. So this is a unique type of financial activity that can happen on blockchains that are what we call proof of stake. Super technical now, but essentially a certain type of blockchain has a mechanism that makes it very, very good for decentralized finance. And decentralized finance is like playing in all of the things that traditional finance plays with, but inside the blockchain ecosystem on a less gatekeeping way. Like the gatekeeping is done only because you don't understand it, not because you don't have this license or that regulation or this registration or that qualification. And so in that world, you have things like liquidity pools, where because I own a certain token, I could put my token in your contract or business and store it there. And that liquidity pool allows you to do things like allow people to exchange assets between each other, kind of like FX trading with a little bit of arbitrage. You make some money, I earn interest. So it's worth my money being a part of your business and you get to run your business on top. or I can lend you my assets so that you can do some day trading. And, again, it's usually almost a swaps or some kind of weird financial, whatever, derivative thing. And I get money back because I lent it to you. You make money, everybody goes away. And it's not without risk. Do your own research. This is not financial advice. These things are really structured and you have to understand what you're doing. But what I have observed is that some of the companies that start up in this space are younger and potentially less technically qualified than you would expect if you wanted to go and work at a JP Morgan. There's one protocol in particular that I'm thinking of. I won't name them because I'm going to talk about the founders specifically, and I don't know if this information they have. But they have built their financial protocol on, I think, 3 different blockchains right now. And I think one of the founders is Canadian or certainly studied here in Canada. Like the founders, the amount of people they need to run this business is small. So they've got small teams. They are in their late 20s and they have billions of dollars that they are managing across their products. And they are incredibly smart. But I know that a typical trader would probably look down their nose at them if they'd walked in with a CV and said, could you give me a job? But what they've been able to do is utilize this space to build a financial ecosystem. And their financial ecosystem is incredibly trustworthy. Their business operations are very evident for people to see. They're backed by people who know what they're talking about. They don't participate in the weird, fraudy stuff.
Yeah.
And so you end up with a very trusted product, a very young team, very low cost to start, but they were right time, right product in a market where people were looking for ways to add leverage. And now they're probably well established for generations. And I think, that's one very specific case in decentralized finance. But, I've seen lawyers enter that space. I've seen sometimes some of the people who are actually using these assets are like mom and pops, like middle American. They play the raffles, they do little bits of gambling, and now they're participating in decentralized finance. It's the same kind of game that they're playing, but they make a little bit more money. And so their customer base is actually a behavior that exists. I don't know that it's that easy to get into finance if you are outside of blockchain. Right. It's actually incredibly opaque. And don't get me wrong, there's risk, but there's that. There are products still to solve. People are super interested in ticketing, social media on chain, verification on chain, fun on chain, games. Like there are all these spaces where it's still quite an immature ecosystem. And think what you like about blockchain, but the fact that when you build something on a blockchain, you have a built-in economic model, it makes it an interesting place to play. And I think, a lot of people would probably say like, everyone should code. Maybe the code you should be learning is smart contract languages. Maybe the coding you should be thinking about, the frameworks you should be looking at are blockchain-based solutions, and starting to educate yourself. If you're thinking about moving into a tech role or you're struggling to find work, go create the job. Go be the solution person that helps other people come into this space, because I genuinely think that's where the money is.
Yeah, I think there are 2 types of people, though. Well, there are probably more, but the 2 that I've seen just like in work is the people who are those entrepreneurs who can be sort of self-guiding, drive themselves, like have that energy in themselves, that hunger. And then there are people who need to take direction. Like they like the comfort of knowing what they need to do. They like lowered risk. They just want to be told, hey, this is how we define success. Here are the things that you can do within that, and they can go do their best work. And those types of people don't operate well if they don't have that structure. I see this in some people. And so, I think definitely the entrepreneurs, the folks that are okay in that ambiguity, they can self-drive into curiosity, learn on their own. But I don't think everyone has the same capacity to make it like without that structure.
Yes and no. I mean, I completely agree. I don't think everyone's designed to start a unicorn and blow the world out of proportion. But I think necessity should bring out something in you, right? Like it's the thing is an income or nothing. You're going to get your entrepreneurial, you're going to get your agency up. You're going to get up in the morning and try to make some money.
I think I agree. I want to agree with you, but I know people who is not the case.
So I think
they will make excuses.
They will make excuses. So maybe let's use an example of one that I know well, Nigeria. So on my blockchain, for example, there's a huge Nigerian community. Like we have so many participants who are holding the token, looking for projects to help with doing stuff, trying to learn the code. There's going to be a giant workshop and training session.
Nigeria.
But here's the thing. There is no safety net in Nigeria. And what that has done is it means that potentially a greater proportion of people are more entrepreneurial than you would normally expect in a typical. So like literally, have you got $20? You're going to go buy water and you're going to try and resell the water. Like everybody gets their entrepreneurship on to a certain extent within their capacity. Is it how society should operate? No, because I believe very strongly in safety nets. But I do think one of the things that I value in that cultural mechanic is that everybody has this idea that, okay, I'd like a job, but even if I have a job or don't have a job, I'm always thinking about other things I could be doing, and they're highly motivated to try.
Well, I feel like number one, that's like most Nigerians.
Yeah.
Like I feel like you just like naturally, you're never just okay with just having that one thing. You have that bred in you where you're like, okay, well, I have this stability here just in case. I need to consider some options. Like what else can I always be learning? Like that's why we always have like 20 degrees or whatever it is. But you know, I agree fully. I do, when I go to work, when I interact with individuals though, I do meet folks who are very content in their safe
bubble
space
because they think they have job security, and then bang, layoff.
Yeah, but even for exactly. But even for people who are looking for jobs, when I do talk to them, I'm like, why don't you consider like researching, like understanding, like what are your passions? And they're not able to tap into that other side. It's very much that narrow focus. I shouldn't say narrow, but very much that focus of, I need a job.
Yeah.
I need a job, you know?
There's so much entrenched in that as well, though. It's like what society values in your work. It's like, can you explain what you do? Do people covet it? Is it like, does it give you social capital to say, I work at a FANG or I started my own random blockchain business? You may actually be making the most money in the room, but everyone's like, I don't even know what that person does, so I don't respect it or whatever. And I think there's a lot of social conditioning work that does a bit too much heavy lifting in that space. But again, my advice is in a cozy living scenario, in a low job scenario where your traditional skill set is now less valued than it was, even if you get another job, are you going to earn the same amount of money? It's time to diversify. And I think a lot of people need to look less side-eye at blockchain technology and think about it as do I want to use the word inevitable? Maybe not inevitable, but it isn't it's an opportunity space. It's an emergent opportunity space with lots of potential, and it lacks all of the skills. It lacks content strategists, because my God, do we need to improve the language? Because who the hell invented some of this stuff? It lacks UX researchers, because we're talking about paradigm shifting behaviors from everything is private to most things are public. What are the implications for people? How do we capture intuition? How do we plan for safe onboarding and trust signals? Like every skill that traditional tech thinks it values less, take your skill set and apply it to the problem state that blockchain is in right now. And I'm pretty certain you're going to find a gap and you're going to find an opportunity. You could be the number one YouTube influencer with videos explaining the basic concept of a wallet to grandmothers in Wisconsin. Like that could be your niche.
True.
And the content is so appropriate, so well targeted, so well put together. your YouTube is earning crazy money in ads because no one else has really created that content for grandmothers in Wisconsin. Like there's a book that I got for Nineveh when she was first born, because that was my first time in blockchain 2017, called Blockchain for Babies. The amount of people who I've now seen going to buy that book again, it's like 5 pages of the most simple blockchain explanation ever, but it's in a kid's hard book. The people who wrote that book are making money every year. And in 2024, I feel like they're making the most money because they wrote this silly book called Blockchain for Babies. And it's for babies. It doesn't tell you anything particularly detailed, but it's selling. And I think someone showed me a link here in Canada. It was like $64. I was like, I mean, books are expensive in Canada, which is wild. But I was like, I'm sorry, what?
$64.
Yeah, it was wild. But I think there's so much opportunity here. And it's not scammers are us. It is very much like apply your skill set. Don't decide to do this snobbish thing. Oh, crypto, it's just so whatever. It's like, no. It's time. It's time. This is where there's work. Yeah, come be here. And I definitely think if Elon can make up an investment in a Dogecoin, and that thing is still going. It's still going. And we know that there are millionaires made on Dogecoin for reasons I cannot explain. But when I think about, where is it? I'm going to try and find the market cap for Dogecoin.
Of Doge?
Yeah. $26.8 billion. Billion dollars.
You're going to say million.
No, $billion.
26.8.
Right. You may not understand it, but if you're thinking about how am I going to pay into my 401k or afford my health insurance, you should pay attention to where the money is right now. Yeah. And it's in blockchain. 26 point, and this is for a coin that does nothing. It's just cultural capital. It's just, you're in the club. You're one of these people, you're Elon's bros, or maybe you put your money in it. Again, there's a great film by Apple. This is not financial advice. People who made a ton of money on meme coins. It's weird, it's wacky, but I'm like, if they can make money in this space and you have a much more solid idea, experience, something even simpler for the everyday person, surely there's an opportunity to get a little bit of your entrepreneur.
There's a lane for you.
Yeah, there's a lane. And, do it with your friends, but I definitely encourage it.
Yeah.
It's my PSA.
Well, you heard it here first. Yeah, you heard it here, folks. There's opportunities over in blockchain land. But no, I think it's spot on. Like, I think instead of sort of applied endlessly to the same empty jobs, like waiting for responses from recruiters who aren't going to email you back, it's like, okay, in that meantime, explore, be curious, test a little bit of the uncomfortable. And the great thing about day today is that there's YouTube, there's so much content out there that explains to you the very basics of how to do things. And so if we want to learn, we truly can learn.
Yes, we can. We've made this show for you, and we want to hear your stories. We have our combined 35 years experience in tech. We have an incredible bank of experts to call on. We are your safe space. So send us your tech challenges and we'll help you create some draft decisions through some real talk.
You've been listening to me, Mamuna Oladipo.
And me, Lola Oyelayo-Pearson.
Edited and produced by me, Michael Busse, with theme music by 031 Mash.
Email us at help@lostintechpodcast.com or DM us at lostintechpod.